two, one, two, three.
Hello, and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I am Maribel Tineo, and I am speaking with New York City DSA members Ethan Oro and Daeha Ko about their fight for public broadband in New York City. As many of our listeners know, across Tompkins County, many residents have unreliable or costly internet access or no internet access at all. The pandemic has only exacerbated the problem as thousands of children and families struggle with online education, working from home, and or staying connected with family and friends. Greater demand for reliable internet has caused many cities to deepen their efforts to expand and improve services. And with Biden infrastructure money projected to reach cities across the nation, many cities want to be prepared to make use of this money toward a more expansive, efficient, equitable, and affordable system. Many progressives, however, want to ensure that in this moment of crisis, we move toward a democratically run system in which both the infrastructure is publicly owned and internet provision publicly managed. Such is the vision of New York City DSA, which we will focus on for today. Ethan is a recent graduate in computer science and ethics and a member of New York City DSA. Through those programs, he studied how the production of digital space reproduces existing inequalities. He currently works at Illumis, a company that makes publicly accessible data usable for campaigns and political organizations for research, as well as for investors of public money to manage pay-to-play compliance. Within New York City DSA, he is a member of the Tech Action Working Group, has helped contribute to their upcoming municipal broadband network report, and does field work. Daeha Ko is a community organizer active in several New York-based organizations. In New York City DSA, he is involved with several working groups, including the Tech Action Working Group. He has helped to co-organize the Internet for All in New York City campaign, advocating for public municipal broadband. Welcome, Ethan and Daeha. Why don't we start with you telling us why public broadband is a key issue for New York City DSA and what model you are pursuing? As we know, this is public broadband is a long-standing issue, and within the last 2 years, it's become this incredible issue that many cities across the nation are grappling with. How did you guys become interested, and where are you in the process? What is your vision?
New York City DSA's Tech Action Working Group got involved in the fight for public broadband when we helped form the Internet for All Coalition with Vocal New York and IBEW Local 3 Union, who have been on strike for the last 4 years. And so I think the coalition was born, I think, out of kind of like two separate ideas. I think the first is the sort of like ideological idea that internet is infrastructure. It is essential for the everyday functioning of citizens, both within New York City and all across the country. And the second idea too is that within New York City, we've seen 46% of New York City households living in poverty do not have broadband access at home. Access to the internet is deeply segregated by race. New Yorkers are paying some of the highest fees relative to internet speeds, and thousands of students, elders, and people experiencing homelessness in shelters do not have access to broadband connection in the midst of a pandemic. And so I think there were sort of like both the ideological and also the sort of like material conditions that sort of came together for us to sort of connect with both labor and with community organizations to try to push for a municipal broadband network within New York City.
To elaborate, the idea for public internet, came about through NYC DSA Tech Action around its, existing, conversations with regards to net neutrality, and the kind of control that private telecoms can have, when it comes to throttling content. So it was around those conversations, in addition to, it's like working to organize labor around tech, that the ideas around public internet, started to, materialize and just kind of accumulated into, reaching out to other organizations, speaking about, internet as as an essential tool. And to what Ethan was saying, that this is it's not just a matter of technical issues, but this is an issue that affects Black and brown people, low it's like working people, low income areas, where during the pandemic, it really just indicated just how much of an essential utility the internet is, like electricity. Without it, it is hard to get everyday needs, such as like your doctor's appointment, or like going to school, done. And the pandemic just really showed the discrepancies, between wealthy areas and and then like low income areas. So we're also very much addressing a human issue on top of the technical one.
And I think to add on to what Daeha said as well, right, the sort of disparities in internet access and the digital divide isn't by coincidence. It's sort of a kind of a standard practice of a lot of private ISPs called digital redlining, where they roll out their faster services to wealthy areas and don't roll out their faster services to low income areas. And there's a huge sort of disparate ability to access the internet. And so I think that's one of the things that really drives home the point that if private ISPs are profit motivated, they do not have the best interest of all like New Yorkers and all people in mind. And so having a publicly controlled municipal broadband network ensures that internet access is sort of a right rather than a privilege. And we've seen people try to apply for jobs online. They try to connect and stay in contact with their loved ones. They try to apply for like public social services like SNAP or other things like that. And so I think it seems to be such a critical piece of accessing public services and keeping in touch with loved ones that it seems that it has crossed the boundary of a privilege, and it has so clearly been staked as a necessity.
And there, as you've mentioned, there are multiple stakeholders here: the municipality, the customers, the workers. They all have stakes in the matter. For example, the municipality could use profit from broadband to fund other public services. Customers want low prices. Workers want higher pay and better benefits. How do you envision within your model these varying priorities being managed?
So it's important to take into account, and address everybody's, needs and concerns. Now, are you talking about like when? Are you talking about like for this campaign, or like when we get public internet established?
Right, your vision once you get it established. How will all those constituencies be addressed? How will all their interests be managed and met? Okay.
So it is important to have a governing board, with representatives, from groups representing labor, education, public housing, to ensure that access to broadband is met and that all concerns are properly addressed. Because if this is truly to be a public benefit to everybody, then it is important that not just the campaign, but then the actual, that the actual governing structure, if you will, that oversees this, ensures that public internet is truly inclusive of everyone involved.
And I think to add on to that, I think we're sort of still kind of early in our campaign. We're sort of doing a lot of canvassing and organizing. And I think right now, I think one of the key pieces of the vision that we have is that we have sort of like one kind of standard rate for all who can afford it, which would be $40 for, I think, 1,000 up, and free for all and any who cannot afford it. And I think, just like Daeha was saying, we hope to have like, full accountability with services, a democratically controlled kind of like operating board that sets rates and works with labor. And so I think, so I mean, I think that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, because we're really in the early stages of this campaign, so we do have some ideas of where we would like to go, but like further research and studies will need to be undertaken to really build out a feasible plan on what that could look like. We have been looking at other models, so for example, there is like like Ethan was saying, in terms of cost, it's like out in Lafayette, Louisiana, they have like a community internet network where it's like 10 gigabytes at $20. So an example of like a price point there, and then so it's again, so we're just we're figuring this out along the way, and it's like the more we can bring into the coalition, the more ideas that we can generate for this.
Great, thanks. And many progressives, such as an Ithaca DSA and Ithaca Working Families Party, want to move in the direction of a fully public broadband model, just like yourselves. And that is both public ownership of the infrastructure and also public provision of the services. What are the benefits to this, and how do you respond to those who support a model that promotes public-private partnerships in which the private internet service providers benefit from publicly financed and publicly owned infrastructure while continuing to be private service providers? I mean, some say in this model, the risk is socialized while the profit is privatized. Why do you think that the fully public is still the better route to go? Why did you choose that particular model, and what does it have over even the public-private partnership model?
I think for, at least for us, there are a couple ways to think about this. I think one is just looking sort of like at the status quo to see how have public-private partnerships been functioning, and right within New York City, within Tompkins County, within like all across the United States, it's relatively clear that they're not functioning well with everyone's interest in mind. I think another kind of theory that we've been running with is the idea that if a private entity can build a internet network and turn a profit, then a public entity can also build a municipal broadband network and do it more efficiently and save through not caring about profits, but rather making sure that you pay workers fairly, making sure that you set rates affordably. And I think another piece that sort of is sort of like a big roadblock for making sure that municipal broadband gets spread throughout the United States is that I think in 18 states there's some form of either ban or kind of roadblock to implementing any kind of municipal broadband network. I think a really good example is in North Carolina. The state legislature passed, I think in like 2011 maybe, passed a bill that said you're not allowed to build municipal broadband networks anymore. And it was heavily advocated for by private ISPs because they claimed that a municipal broadband network amounted to unfair government subsidized competition. And so if they're afraid that a municipal broadband network will provide really fast rates at a really low price and it will drive out competition, I think that to us signals that perhaps the private market isn't doing a good enough job at providing the kind of internet access that everybody needs, and that the fully public model will do a better job perhaps than the private public partnerships, or that a fully private model would do.
And adding to that is educating the public about what what a real public internet service looks like. Because the word public-private partnership is thrown around quite a bit, and because of corporate, because largely due to corporate propaganda, it's often conflated as being the same thing, or that the two are very mutually beneficial to each other. So it's like if we can benefit the public, you can also benefit the private. And it's like municipalities will put out studies showing the benefits of a public-private partnership, but it's misleading, and in that, I mean, like New York City did a study on it, but it's really misleading on what this will actually do, for municipalities, and if the same kind of quality service, will be delivered. I mean, it's going to fall along the same lines of what corporate telecoms do, which is they're going to they're going to utilize public subsidized public built infrastructure while continuing to profit off of it. So long story short, I think education to the public is what will be needed to show what public broadband is, and also examples from around the country.
Yeah, and just to mention quickly, connecting to what you guys just said, and speaking to folks in Dryden, in the town of Dryden here in Tompkins County, who support the fully public broadband, they argue that one of the benefits is that not the municipality can have the extra revenue to invest in other programs, or they could actually, like Ethan said, not have the extra revenue, but actually use it to provide the services at a lower cost and at a higher quality. And so that when in speaking with a lot of folks from that town that are pursuing this fully public model, that is one of the arguments that they're using. I think on the other end, those who support the more sort of public-private partnerships in which the internet service providers continue to provide the service. There's this idea that there will be greater competition, which will bring down costs. However, some of those folks in Dryden have also pointed to many municipalities around the country in which some of these internet service providers don't actually end up bringing down the cost. They just actually agree on a sort of uniform cost, so that there is no real competition and they all get to profit. So anyway, so thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I guess the next question is about the complexity of all this, and what your strategy is for navigating the messiness of this process. There's a lot going on in New York State at the same time and in different directions. And so the question would be, like, how do socialists like yourselves strategize within this context? As we mentioned before, the political leadership in some New York State cities and towns, for example, favor a municipal broadband model that entails the public-private. Then you have some that simply support the current New York State initiative to require broadband providers to give low-income people access for $15 a month. And then, of course, we have, many progressives like yourselves who want the profit element out of the service altogether, and want to push for universal, provision and operation of the service, just as in like the single payer healthcare. And some of these supporters of the public-private model claim reasons such as being ready to quickly make use of the Biden infrastructure money. They are perhaps fearful that there's limited time to use this money to rebuild a whole new system that excludes private internet service providers, or they fear political opposition because it's a given that there's going to be a lot of opposition from, private companies. And then you have another model, like in cases in which, like Clarity here in Tompkins County just received the $1.3 million grant from the state to build out services to underserved homes in Tompkins County. So down to the main question, which is, what is your political strategy to ensure that the fully public broadband model prevails within this context? And what is the feasibility of this model in New York City, and more broadly, if you can speak to the feasibility of this fully public broadband model in New York State as a whole? Like, it's right, it's not just about what's better for the people, it's also about like, what's the feasibility of getting this done, and what are the strategies to actually successfully implemented while beating out some of the competing ideologies and interests.
I think no matter what your campaign is, or what its objective is, this comes down to base building and grassroots organizing on the ground, along with a political education campaign to start framing the narrative. So it's like, no matter if it takes place in New York City or New York State, it's like these are, again, the base building and the grassroots organizing and the political education, and pushing lawmakers to publicly address the issue is what will, and keeping the pressure on is what will make a campaign succeed. It's like the Tax the Rich campaign that DSA mounted is an example. It's actually a very good example of a statewide campaign, and despite any administrative bureaucratic or legal differences, in municipalities or counties, this was this is where many DSA chapters were able to work together, and then fight for a progressive budget in Albany. So likewise, we can take many of those elements that we're using the Tax the Rich campaign and apply it to internet for all. So this is going to involve phone banking, door knocking, street canvassing. It's like talking. Talking to different organizations, going into public housing with continue to build relations with labor groups. All the essential components of organizing to have a campaign succeed. This is not going to be easy. There is absolutely going to be a lot of opposition. So it is important, it is especially important that we educate and warm the public to the idea of public internet. And it's also important to put a human face on the issue. At our press conference and public launch, we had people speaking, from Vocal, like parent teachers associations, about the human impact of not having public internet, because it ultimately comes down to people's material condition. If they cannot make the doctor's appointment, if they cannot make their appointment to to obtain housing, if they're trying to get out of being homeless, if you cannot be caught up on your schoolwork, these are all things that affect what people can do. So while it is absolutely important to ensure that we do get a budget, that we utilize fiber that will be intact for infrastructure that will be intact for the next 50 to 100 years. It is also important to put the human face on the issue.
Absolutely, I literally could not have said it better. I think there's obviously going to be a lot of political obstacles, and I think specifically, I think the two key messages that we're trying to get across in our campaign is first that private ISPs are doing a bad job, right? And they have consistently failed people both within New York City and across New York State. And I think that's something that everybody can relate to. I don't think anyone would say I love my private ISP. And I think the second piece is that a publicly owned, publicly operated municipal broadband network is feasible and it is desirable. It will I think the plan that we have is to try to lay fiber optic cables through the street and into every single home, something that Verizon had a contract to do, but failed to upkeep. And the city is now suing them for that. And so I think that the idea, especially both within New York City, I think across all of New York State, is that trying to provide an investment in infrastructure in fiber that is the only future-proof internet infrastructure that is known right now will not only have sort of like long-lasting sustainable effects, but will also just try to help start to create the kind of public services and public infrastructure that I think not just confined to internet, I think is desperately needed throughout New York State right now.
Yeah. I might also add too that this issue of public broadband, because it touches so many aspects of life, there are opportunities to intersect with many other causes. So like with housing, healthcare, it's like defunding police, and the list, it's like the environment. A real opportunity to build a broad, a broad base of support around these issues. And it also shows how, the internet, connects and touches people's lives. I think there is still some little distance about the internet, just thought of it as just this technology where you just go and do things, but you don't necessarily think of how much of an impact it has. I think, especially for people who do have ready access and just kind of take it for granted that it's there, despite maybe griping about like the high prices that these private telecoms are charging. So it's like by intersecting with other types of causes, we can really build out mass mobilization around the issue.
Well, thank you so much for your time on the show. Where can people learn more about this issue and get involved? Any final thoughts? Quickly, 2 seconds each.
Yes, you can go to our website, which is internetforall.nyc.
And email us at tech.action@socialist.nyc. Would love to talk about municipal broadband network, tech organizing, like any of the above. Yeah.
All right, well, this has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I am Maribel Tineo, and I was speaking with New York City DSA members Ethan Oro and Daeha Ko about their fight for public broadband in New York City. We thank you so much.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.